eBay Motors and Fox Racing welcome you to episode 60 of the Lowdown Show. I'm Neil Graham. In this episode, I talked to Manny Barrow and the legend behind the dirt, Fazer. More on this in a moment. Manny, who's now in his 70s, is a charming, gregarious man and the most spectacular off-road crasher any of us have ever met. But has his misfortune made him change his riding style? Not a chance. But before we take the leap, a word from those who make the Lowdown possible. Picture this, you're halfway through a DIY motorcycle, fixed tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. Well, don't fret, it's okay, because whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything, brake rotors, lights, entire exhaust systems, whatever you need, and it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers hoping you order the right thing. All the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. In over 50 years of connecting riders to dirt, Fox Racing has learned that the best gear always has a discernible purpose and a strong point of view. The Ranger, Defend, and Recon Adventure Collection takes a minimalist approach to product design with a clear mission of providing everything you need in adventure-ready gear and absolutely nothing you don't need. Minimalist chassis, fully seam-sealed with Gore-Tex waterproofing and D3O CE level protection across the board. This gear is every bit as pure as the adventure you're chasing. I knew of your legend before I met you. Now, I met you, must have been 20 years ago, the one and only time we ever met in person.
Pretty much, yeah.
On a ride going up to Perron, I believe it was in northern
Actually, it
Quebec.
was 2 rides. We did 2 rides together.
Did we?
Yeah, 2 consecutive years, yeah.
Oh, my God. You've got a better memory than mine.
Okay.
I must have offended you if you remember.
No, not at all.
If you remember. But anyway, I knew about you because of something called the Dirt Fazer.
Yep.
And it was this motorcycle that you made, and I'm going to pop a picture of it right up in the screen here. Right there. So this is probably the most inappropriate off-road motorcycle ever made, and you made it. So I want an explanation of what this is and then why the hell you did it.
Well, first of all, in my opinion, it's not inappropriate at all, because in one of my rides up north in Perron, for example, we used to go every year. One of the fellas rode an R100 GS, the Paris Dakar model, and I never thought that such a big bike would could do the trails and all that, but he did, and he was there. And my brother also has an R100 GS. So one year, one of my buddies needed a bike. His bike was broken, so I lent him mine, which was at the time was an XT 550 Yamaha. And I asked my brother to borrow his BMW. And I did the whole Perron ride on my brother's BMW.
And we have to jump, just for our listeners, Perron is how far from the base point in northern Quebec? How far?
Well, we always left from Saint-Anne-du-Lac, which is about, from my house here, it's about 200 kilometers or so.
Right.
And then to get to Perron from Saint-Anne-du-Lac, it's about 200 other kilometers, another 180, from 180 to 200, depending on the trails that we take,
And some pretty variable terrain, if I remember correctly.
All kinds. You can go by dirt roads all the way if you wish, or you can take old roads which have become trails over the years, or you can actually take like single track or double 2-track trails, actual trails.
Yeah. Okay, so back to this bike. Now that I interrupted you to talk about Perron, but take me back to this bike and its development.
Well, like I said, I did it on a big 1000cc BMW, right? And tell me something. How is the BMW with its cylinder sticking out either side, right? More appropriate as a dirt bike than my Fazer, which has an inline 4 inclined down. It's slim by the leg, so you can stand up, actually, and nothing sticks out to hit. I put a skid plate on it, so, it could just do the same thing as any other dirt bike. It's a torquey motor, very, very torquey. So you can use it for even the gnarly trails, I could do it on this bike, which is amazing. I never knew that when I was building it. I built it for like the fast dirt roads and for sliding, which I love to do. And but it worked in every medium. The real gnarly rocky stuff, it was a little bit sketchy. And I always found that, well, when it's really gnarly, just give it a little gas. It's amazing. You either get over the obstacle with no problem, or you crash real hard. But
or the obstacle will get over you.
exactly, the suspense is over with in any case, right?
Now, so what's the actual suspension from on this bike? What's the fork from?
The front suspension is off an XT600,
Right.
which didn't no, sorry, it was an YZ250, because it had a 38 millimeter forks, which are the same as the stock Fazer forks, so I could slip them onto the stock triple clamps. The front wheel that I had didn't have a disc brake, and the forks didn't have a disc brake. They only had a small little drum, and that wasn't going to cut it. So I had a friend of mine weld the nubs to mount the caliper on the front fork. And I already had an XT600 wheel with a disc, and that's what's in there. It's YZ250 front fork, XT 600 front wheel and disc and brake, and that's about it. Yeah, that's in the front.
And then the back end is just a knobby tire on a spoke rim.
RZ 500 wheel, because it's 18-inch, and the diameter of the disc in the rear, usually stock, it was the same size as the front, which is very big, and it would hang down quite a bit, and sometimes might hit a rock or something. The RZ 500 had a smaller disc and carrier. I use that, like on the back.
Now the Fazer was the 5-valve engine, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah,
and it's
same exact engine as the FZ 750.
But they don't have? I always thought they had a reputation for being kind of peaky, but you're saying no.
Not at all.
Oh, really?
The 5-valve FZ or FZX, which is what the Fazer is, they're identical motors except for appearance. The Fazer seems to have a cosmetic fins on the side, but they're just cosmetic. They don't do anything.
Right.
It's liquid cooled, just like the FZ is. How do we know this? We stuck a Fazer engine, the spare Fazer engine I had, in my buddy's FZ 750, and went endurance racing with it, and we didn't notice any difference in performance whatsoever. None. It was the exact same motor.
I think perhaps as much as anything, it was your behavior on the dirt Fazer that first the news got to me. You had apparently a fondness for going down dirt roads at 100 miles an hour, throwing rooster tails like a hydroplane. Will you confess to that?
Yes. That was the best thing I could do. The most fun I have ever had. Like I watched Kenny Roberts do the mile on the TZ 750, right?
Yeah.
And you know how that wailing and sliding wildly, and I wanted something that would do something similar to that, but it could also do the trails. This Fazer, it has only about 100 horsepower, but it winds to 10,000 RPM, and it pulls really hard. And when I learned how to ride it, like with the rear wheel just spinning all the time, so badly that I used to put a brand new knobby before our rides up north, and within 100 kilometers there wasn't a knob left in the back.
So just for people that are unfamiliar with kilometers versus miles, that's 60. So you wear out a tire in 62 miles.
That's right. There wasn't a knob left in the middle,
So it was just you just blew them off.
Well, at 180 kilometers an hour, which is let's say 110 miles an hour. Yeah, that's what happens. Knobbies are not designed to do this kind of stuff, but it sure was fun while it lasted.
And now, whatever became of the dirt phaser?
That's another. Everything has a great story. Like one day I never played that bike because I had another phaser, a stock one. And so whenever I wanted to use it on the street, it had turn signals and headlight and all that stuff. Whenever I wanted to use it on the street, I would do the right thing and take the plate off my other phaser, put it on that phaser, and use it whenever I needed to, which wasn't all that often because it wasn't particularly comfortable, for example. The seat was off a XT 225 and the rear fender as well. So you had the skinny little seat, which was hard, but it looked cool. It looked like a dirt bike, so that's what went on. And so I was coming back from work one afternoon, and it threw a chain, or rather, the front sprocket, came off the shaft for some reason. Yeah, I guess it got loose, and I hadn't tightened it, and the chain wrapped itself around the countershaft sprocket or the shaft and locked my rear wheel in the highway. So I skidded to a stop on the inside of the highway, the 40, come in Montreal. And I skidded to a stop, and I go, I can't even push it because it won't move. And since the bike wasn't really plated, I started thinking and says, what am I going to do? I can't push it to the side. I can't push it anywhere. My trailer and car are back home. I've asked my wife once or twice to bring me the trailer, but not this time.
I'm guessing once or twice too often.
Exactly. She doesn't like that too much. Anyway, I took the license plate off of it. I took the toolkit, which I had strapped onto it. I ran across the street, the highway, the 3 lanes of highway. Walked in. This is before cell phones, by the way. I didn't have a cell phone at the time. I went to the gas station, which I could see right there. And I called my wife and says, listen, can you come and pick me up? My bike broke down as usual. You're accustomed to this. I'm at the gas station. So off St. John's. Okay. So she will. She did. As she arrives, the first drops of rain come down. Okay. I get in the car, and a thunderstorm, like a large thunderstorm, starts coming down. We drive home, power's out. I look at the trailer, which is in my driveway, and one of the tires is flat. I couldn't open the garage because, and I couldn't pump up the tire anyway because my compressor is out, right, with the power. So I figured, I guess somebody up there doesn't want me to go get this bike, right? So I left it there. I abandoned it. It was perfectly rideable except for the countershaft sprocket that came off. But nonetheless, I figured I've done a lot with this bike already. It's enough.
The Lowdown Show is presented by advrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. Manny, you have a long history in motorcycling. Just looking over some of the photographs you sent me. Let's see if I can get this right. There we go. Yep. Remove. Sorry, give me a moment here. There we go. Yeah, you've been involved in sort of every aspect of motorcycling, and it seems like there's a very tight knit group in Quebec of sort of ultra enthusiasts, of which I would count you as one of them. You dirt ride, you road race, you'll race anything, ride anything. I mean, is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. You know why? Because I watched on any Sunday. That's why.
That's what started it all.
That's what started it all. I had a motorcycle already, but I was just another motorcyclist, right? Like not particularly good at it, or I just didn't do a lot of it. I had a motorcycle. Actually, at the time, I had a Kawasaki 250 Samurai A1 250, a rotary valve twin,
right?
Which I loved. but I didn't know. One time, a friend of mine asked me, "Is that a 2 or 4-stroke?" And I says, "I don't know. What's the difference?" He says, "Well, 4-strokes have valves." Oh, this must be a 4-stroke. It has a rotary valve. It says right. Anyway, that's how I started. And the reason I loved motorcycles even before then, my father in Portugal, I was born in Portugal, had a Vespa 90. And every evening after supper, he'd say, "You want to go for a ride to the next town," which was Nazaré. I was born 12 kilometers from Nazaré. Nazaré is that town where the massive 100-foot waves with the surfers going down it. That's
Yeah.
12 kilometers from my hometown where I was born. So he'd take the Vespa with me in the back and go to the cafe in Nazaré, and he would be talking with his friends, having his espresso, and I would be sitting on the Vespa going, making motorcycle sounds, shifting the hand shift on the left side,
Yeah.
and just having a blast. And every day, my father would ask me, "You want to go for a ride?" "Yes, Dad." Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was always ready to go, always. So when I got old enough, darn right, I was going to ride a motorcycle myself. Actually, the first motorcycle I bought, my mother, I didn't want to show it to my mother. You know what it was? It was a Bombardier badged Garelli
Oh
50
boy.
cc 50cc 4-speed, which I bought off a buddy of mine that worked with me, and he had bought it at a Ford dealership in Chambly, Quebec. Anyway, long story short, I loved that little bike, but I didn't want to bring it home because my mother wouldn't approve. So I kept it at my friend's house, and then I would walk over there, get on the bike, and drive it all over Montreal. And that was my first one. And the second one was that Kawasaki 250 that I mentioned before.
All right, let's look at this bike again. Where are
This
you?
is an RD 476, and this is in 79. It was my first year of road racing. This was actually the second road race of my life. I had raced it once before at Saint-Air with Alan Labrosse. Me and Alan Labrosse were kind of friends. I knew him from his motorcycle shop, like he used to sell parts at Motor International. And he was there with an S2, I think it is called, the 350 Kawasaki, and I was with my RD 400. And it was a Le Mans start, and he was right beside me, and we bumped each other as we ran to get to the bike. So we didn't get a real good start, but we had a good dice nonetheless, the two of us, And this was the second race, and this was in Shannonville.
Oh, it is Shannonville.
Shannonville. And
So that's a course in southern Ontario, just sort of across the lake from Rochester, for those who don't know the specifics. I mean, there was a huge, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a huge number of RD racers. In fact, there was an RD Cup at the time. Was that what you were involved in?
No. The RD Cup came much later.
Right.
And it wasn't the RD 400 Cup, was the RD 350 liquid cooled.
Oh, the RZ, right?
RZ 350.
Yes.
Cup.
Right.
Back then, this was just 400 production. There was 400Fs, the Hondas and S350 Kawasaki's, 350 or even 250 sometimes. Suzuki Hustlers, and like all the hot bikes of the time. Mainly, but the Yamaha, the 400 Yamaha was the hot ticket. It really was.
No, so for those of us that weren't around the racetrack in those years, I mean, when I look back at old photographs of Shannonville, first of all, I see huge numbers of people in the stands, or any old red racetrack. You see huge people in the stands.
Sorry, forgot to turn off my phone. Okay, there you go.
Phone. There we go. But back to racing in that era. I mean, it really, like this. I mean, this bike obviously still has its headlight and tail light, which looks like you've taped over the tail light.
Exactly.
It really was stock racing, wasn't it? And I mean, I've seen photographs of huge grids. I mean, what was it like in those days?
Like 60.
60 bikes in a class.
Yeah. Those are the heydays. Those are the great times. You should have seen the pits back in those days. You know, like right now, I've been to Shannonville recently, and back in those days, it didn't have as much of the roads that back and forth where you can park your pit vehicles. So we camped out on the grass and all over the place, and that place was full of people. By the end of the weekend, yeah. And let me tell you a story about this second race of all time. I have stories about everything, but I think this one is kind of fun. I talked my wife and my mother to come on for this racing.
Well, you know what? Right off, something bad's going to happen when you bring your wife and your mother.
Well, yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the whole point. If you don't have something bad happen, it's
no
a
story.
boring weekend.
There's no story.
There's no story. Anyway, my mother and my wife drove my Mazda GLC with the race bike in the trailer behind. I drove my mother's Valiant Slant 6 Dodge with the camper trailer behind that. And off we went to Calabogie. I only had the one kid at the time, Carla, my eldest. So we set up the campsite. And then I find out from my mother that my father had no car by now because I'm using his car. He says, after work on Saturday, he wants to come over and watch me race. Okay. He had never seen me race or anything like that. So, but he's going to take the bus. So, okay. And he's going to go to Belleville, which is a town not far away that has a bus stop. Okay. At what time? Gives the time a little bit before the time, about a half an hour before the time. Off I go to pick him up. And I didn't see it, but the bus is right a little bit behind, as I turn off to go to Belleville. I go to Belleville, no father. The bus comes in, my father's not in it. And he says, oh, is it an older gentleman? Says, yeah. Says, I let him off in front of the Shannonville race park. Oh, okay. So he saw his car being driven to Belleville and figured out that, wait a minute, I get off here. Let me off here if you can. Okay. And he went to the camper, which he recognized because it was his camper. And he sees my bike sitting there and he gets on it and he starts it. And he's going to ride after us. No helmet, no nothing, no lights because it's all plated up. But him, he doesn't know that there's laws in he rode motorcycles in Portugal, not the same as driving them in Canada. Anyway, he didn't make it very far. He made it to the door because he forgot that you have to open the gas, right? I shut the petcock. So he ran out of gas and but when we got back, he's sitting by the gate at most part was at
Shannonville. Yeah.
And he's sitting there and we come in and says, what are you doing here, Dad? He says, well, I tried to go catch you. He says, oh, what happened? Well, I saw you driving away. I figured I'd get on your bike and catch up to you, I can let you know. But it didn't go very far. What's wrong with this bike? Oh, okay, Dad. You have to open the gas. Okay, all right. Anyway, and he held the bike for me the next day for the Le Mans start. Believe it or not, I never had my father never, ever went to the racetrack again in his whole life. But that one time that he did, he had memories, I gave him an adventure of his own. And he held the bike for me. I started the race. I crashed coming onto the main straightaway right in front of my wife, my mother, and my father. And they thought I was dead because I disappeared under the little, what do you call that?
The hay bales?
Tire wall. There's a tire wall.
Tire wall.
And I disappeared into the tires, right? Oh, my son is dead. My mother's, my Portuguese mother's coming, screaming and coming down the thing. I'm fine.
Let's take a short break with a few words from our sponsors. Picture this. You're in the garage, your favorite room in the house, and you're tuning up your engine with parts that you found on eBay. Every piece is just locking perfectly into place, and you step back to admire your work, hands covered in grease. And because you're committed to riding that thing farther than the odometer can even handle, you start thinking to yourself, you know what? I could probably also use some new brakes, maybe a shock. This baby, well, it certainly deserves a new air filter. So you head straight back to eBay. You can find any part you need there. It's unreal. From headlights to air filters to exhaust systems, all the way to those carbon fiber rims you've had in your mind. eBay is the stock garage of your dreams. And you've got eBay guaranteed fit because eBay knows the DIY fixes can be major and mods are always incredibly intense. So you need to know those parts are guaranteed to fit every time before you dive in, wrench first. And on the off chance you order a part and it doesn't fit, we'll send it back. Simple as that. You know what you love more than your bike itself, and that is, of course, riding it. You're serious when it comes to engine maintenance and locked in when you're headed into a build. And that's exactly why you start with eBay. Minor fixer, complete overhaul. You want to get your ride back on the road, and you've got eBay guaranteed fit. So eBay created My Garage, where all you have to do is add your ride's info to get the exact parts that fit. So when you see the green check, you're a click away from that part clicking perfectly into place. Well, now that you know all of this, just imagine standing at that open garage door, looking at the bike you love more than anything, knowing that anything is possible, whether it's keeping it on the road forever or turning it into something never witnessed by humanity before. Because with eBay, your garage just got a whole lot bigger. Get all the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. In over 50 years of connecting riders to dirt, Fox Racing has learned that the best gear always has a discernible purpose and a strong point of view. The Ranger, Defend, and Recon Adventure Collection takes a minimalist approach to product design with a clear mission of providing everything you need in adventure-ready gear and absolutely nothing you don't need. Minimalist chassis, fully seam sealed with Gore-Tex waterproofing and D3O CE level protection across the board. This gear is every bit as pure as the adventure you're chasing. Now back to my conversation with Fazer Manny. The Lowdown Show is presented by advrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. You strike me as someone who has this sort of unassailable enthusiasm for motorcycling, or maybe just life in general. I don't know you well enough to say that. I only see the motorcycle part of it, but where does that come from? You never seem to get discouraged.
Not once, not ever.
I could learn from you. I get discouraged too often, but where does this come from, do you think?
I have no idea, because neither my father nor my mother are like that, like that, or were like that, as far as I could tell. But I think it comes from a overconfident. I'm overly confident in my own capabilities. Okay, and I know.
So is your confidence greater than your skill set?
Absolutely. So I rely, instead of all that, competence is not a big factor in my life, but fate is. I'm one of the luckiest guys I know. So even in adversity, I keep saying the same thing. Even in adversity, the best possible outcome always seems to come to me. One way or another. Oh yes, I might be all busted up and black and blue, and as you've seen personally, I can crash spectacularly, and bounce back, and well, okay, that hurt. Let's go do it today. Try not to do that again. That's my motto. And when in doubt, gas it. That's it.
So back to this notion of fate. So do you believe that it's all written ahead of time, and you are just here performing? No.
It's luck. It's luck. All it is pure dumb luck. That's it.
When I was riding with you all those years ago, I'd heard all the stories about you, and Costa said, man, he's going to go down. It's going to be ugly. And I thought, and nothing happened for a long time. We're riding along, and I'm behind you, and your son, I believe, was on the back that time of the bike. And I think you're on
no, not behind. He had his own bike.
Oh, was he?
He had a little 125 that I gave him.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Little TTR 125.
And what were you riding? Was it a DR?
It was already the DR 650.
DR 650. So you're riding along. We're on this gravel road. Nothing bad could possibly happen. Then you found the bump. The one, and I just remember seeing you shoot up this most cartoonish thing of you just going straight up in the air, and yet you finished the ride. And to show that this is not an isolated incident, you posted something on Facebook a week or so ago. You had another little incident. Tell me about that.
Nah, I should never try to follow my brother. My brother is a very quick motorcycle rider as well. He races, he was raced as well, and he has a BMW, but his is much faster than my BMW. And we were out on a ride, just four of us. And all of a sudden, there's a BMW up ahead. We're catching up to him slowly, and that's my brother's BMW, the
Right.
one I took to Paran the first time. That first time, by the way. Anyway, we're riding around, and we have intercoms. By the way, that's one of the upgrades. Like nowadays we can talk to each other. So I see the BMW when we're catching up to him, and as we catching up to him, he wakes it up. I can see him physically, like, oh, these guys are not going to catch me because I'm a good rider. And he was. Actually, he was. And he takes off. And I know my brother. My brother, it's like a greyhound, watching the rabbit. You see somebody up ahead pulling away? Nah, it's not going to happen. So I get on the intercom before he does it. He says, Ralph, don't do it. Don't do it. And as I say that, he downshifts one and whacks it, and off he goes. And I figured I'm too old to do this kind of stuff, right? So I held back for a little while. But after about 2-3 minutes of this, and he's disappearing off in the distance, I figured, hell with it. I can do that too. Why let him have all the fun all by himself, So I take off after him. But I didn't do it at the same time as he did. So I can't benefit from looking at his lines. You know what I mean? Like, I'm on my own, really. And I'm going faster than he is because I'm trying to catch up to him, So anyway, he passes the BMW rider. So do I. And he's getting closer, but it's hard because he doesn't slow down after he passes the BMW rider. Because I'm pretty sure he saw in the mirrors that I'm coming after him, So my brother does not like to get passed by me or anybody. So he screws it on. And I remember going down this straightaway. I'm doing 180. And the corner doesn't look that bad. But at 180, it is, like, so when I realized how tight it was, it tightened up. And I go, holy cow, I stood it up. I banked as hard as I could, ran out of asphalt. I had another 30 feet of dirt, which, you really don't slow down very much on dirt. And then there's this ditch, and the bike flew right over the ditch, never even dipped into it. The front wheel and front fork embedded itself on the opposite banking, and there's bushes and trees and little trees and stuff. And sat upright, just as you see it in the picture. Never came down. I bumped into something or other because my groin hurts like hell. What else? I have a swollen left foot. I have a chest, a little bit pain when I impacted the windshield, and that front part of the motorcycle. And I fell down. And I'm lying there, and I'm kind of comfortable. I'm actually not uncomfortable. Nothing's broken. I check. Nothing's broken. I look at the bike because it's right there, and doesn't look so bad, And then, but the boys, they're not coming. And then I hear, and they're gone. And I go, hey, guys. And then I hear Charlie go, one of the fellas, says, where's Manny? And I get down the intercom, says, I'm in the ditch. Says, which ditch? Says, the one you just passed by. Oh, okay. So they turned around and he came back. 10 minutes. The first one was Phil. He was the first to come back to see and saw me. And before everybody else got back and, off their bikes and so on and so forth, he comes down and says, can you want to get up? Says, you can't do it. I can't do it by myself. And you can't help me because I weigh a ton. So, And he goes on the top there, and he goes, "Hey, Manny, do you mind if I take a couple of pictures?" Just go ahead. And those are the pictures that you saw.
I saw on
And
Facebook.
me lying there, going, how you doing?
Because you were really down in there, weren't you?
Oh yeah, all the way down. And this ditch is not just it's a hole. It's about maybe 8 feet deep.
Yeah.
If you're standing at the bottom of the hole, nothing is sticking out,
Right.
of a normal person.
And so nothing's broken. So they wrestled you out of the hole.
That's right.
And how was the bike?
I'm sore as hell, but that's it.
How's the bike?
The bike, the crash bar on the left side hit a stump, I think that was underneath there, bent it back, and either cracked or displaced the valve cover enough that it's leaking oil. That's it. Like leaking a trickle of oil. And I look, doesn't seem like a lot. I can ride this thing home. He says, "You sure?" My brother says, "Oh, I'll go with you, but you sure you can ride it home?" I says, yeah. As long as you help me, like getting gas and stuff like that, because I don't. Once I get on the bike, I don't want to get off of it. Off and on, off and on. No, that's not going to work for me. Okay, we'll do that. And I rode 170 kilometers back. Like in that condition. The bike, I had to put some oil on the bike because it was leaking quite a bit more than I thought. And I found out later that it wasn't cracked. The impact of the crash bars against the valve cover bent the two bolts that hold the valve cover in place enough to displace the gasket area. So that's where it was leaking. But I have friends, and they fixed it for me. It's already fixed. Why? Because Phil, my son, who you did the article about, he's getting married day after tomorrow.
Really? Oh, congratulations.
Yes,
Lovely.
and he wants to use that bike for the photo shoot of some kind. I don't know what he's got in mind. And so he comes, he's all disappointed. Says, "Oh, Dad, how come you broke the bike and I can't take it on the photo shoot?" Says, "I'll fix it before you get." Okay, and I did. It's fixed.
And Manny, and how old are you?
I'm 72.
72. And you're still at the foolishness, something we can all aspire to.
Well, don't do it like I do it, but like do it, but try to be a little safer than I have been. Because you can't always count on having my luck. That's the problem.
You mentioned On Any Sunday, and as sort of being this catalyst for you to get into motorcycling, and you seem like the real that generation, a little bit older than me, who really that film was just so seminal, and you rode this huge boom in popularity of motorcycling in the 70s, didn't you? It was just, as you said, 60 rider grid. You did. Yeah. 60 rider grids and production class racing. Everybody had bikes. Is there something also specific in the culture in Quebec about motorcycling? Because I know that a friend of mine, I was saying, how come the roads in Quebec are horrible? And yet, it's full of Italian expensive Italian sport bikes. People just want what they want. And a friend of mine said, when you're flying into Montreal, he said, look down. He said, what do you see? Swimming pools. French Canadians will not be denied their pleasures. And there's just
self-included.
Yourself included. It seems that there's just this incredible enthusiasm for motorcycling and by extension, sort of life in Quebec.
Absolutely. Something like as Anglophone Quebecers, like I consider myself. My wife is born in Quebec from Anglo background, right? So she, we don't have much in common with the actual French Quebecers. I don't anyway. And neither, even less so for the rest of the family. But there's one thing that I can see their passion for motorcycles, and I share that, and I understand it. And that's why I don't mind if they're French or they're English or they're Italian or whatever language they speak best. Doesn't matter to me. As long as you're on a motorcycle. I often say this too. Motorcycling is a great sport to do with other others, because even those people that you don't particularly like can be incredible riding buddies. You don't really have to talk all that much, it's just when you stop, right? And as long as they're decent riders and they don't bump into you or whatever cause you to crash, they're fine riding buddies. I have no problem with them. So motorcycling is in Quebec anyway. It's a global sport. Anglo language doesn't come into effect. Culture doesn't come into effect. Like you're just one of the guys or gals, and that's all. Like that loves this stuff, and they all love it. Yeah. At the time, there was a lot more of the sporty guys. The guys that like to go fast. Now it's more cruisers and so on and so forth. But that's because of the changing dynamics of the population. They're getting older. And they desire to do other things. Even those that at the beginning would ride like a sporty bike or a fast bike uh, will not do it now anymore because they don't feel comfortable on them anymore.
Right.
I'm not one of them, but that's
Well, you are certainly no longer a young man, although you have a young man, an enviable young man's enthusiasm. But is there anything left in motorcycling that you haven't done, that you want to do, or are you happy just doing the things that you've always done?
the one thing I'm sorry I never did, and now it's too late, is to do a 24-hour endurance race.
Mm.
I always wanted to do that, but I never managed. I guess I wasn't in the right spot at the right time. Like if I had been living in Toronto, I'm pretty sure I would have been in there because there was a bunch of teams, from Ontario that did regularly, Warren Milner and so on
Yeah.
and so forth, that used to do these endurance races all the time. And I would read about it in Cycle Canada. And oh man, I wish I could do that, but never happened. But considering I've done pretty darn well, I've done riding, obviously, commuting, drag racing, road racing, enduros, um, motocross a little bit. I won 2 ice racing championships. Eh, I pretty well run the gamut. I've never done hill climbing or trials. Those are the two things that I don't think I've ever attempted. I've not even attempted. I've ridden a trials bike once, and it's just too weird for me. Okay, coming from me, that's too weird.
Well,
I think
it's too.
I'd rather
First of
ride
all,
a speedway bike than a trials bike.
it's too. Well, I race speedway, so at some point we can talk about speedway bikes. But they would have suited you because you never turn the throttle off in a speedway bike.
That's right.
You
That's what
modulate.
I like about it.
You modulate your slide by throttle, but you do not. There is no this because you go straight through the wall. So it punishes prudence, if that makes any sense at all.
You want to slow down, you gas it, get it sideways, and scrub the speed off.
That's right.
It being sideways, right? I learned that on ice racing. So I don't know how speedway really is, but I have a pretty good, like inkling of what it is. Like it feels different, I'm sure, but not that much different. Ice racing was a revelation to me, and it was all because of a buddy of mine calling me up one winter. We used to ride it together all the time, and he goes, "Hey, you got to come down to the ice." What are you talking about? He says, "It's so much fun." And I, like I skied and did all and hockey, but I wanted to do motorcycling in the winter too, if I could. So he talked me into it, and I go in and buy a big box of screws, tiny little screws, no long thread area. And I screw one little screw into each of my dirt bike knobbies, on the XT 550. And I go out to the park to the lake to meet them. And Billy, buddy, he looks at me and he looks at my tires. And he says, "How long are the shanks on those things?" "Oh, they're about half an inch long." "Oh, okay." So he starts smirking. Okay, hey, let's go for a ride. Okay, and he's riding an XS 650 dirt, like street tracker, like a tracker on the ice.
Yeah.
Okay, he's got the right knobs and the right tires, and which he bought from Fournier, like our local guru for making tires, used, of course. And I'm on this homemade one screw per knob kind of thing, no angles, nothing. How bad could it be? Well, I go out the first lap. That's not bad. And I go a little faster. Oh, it's still not bad. And then Billy comes around and catches up to me, and he goes, "Follow me." And he starts really getting it on, and I start really getting it on. But the more I get it on, the less traction I'm having. And then he pulls off a little bit to the side, lets me go through, and I'm all over the place. Every time I get to the corner, the bike is trying to tank slap the whole time. And I go, so I pull out. And he comes in after me and he says, "It was so funny. You didn't realize it, but you were losing like 30, 40 screws per lap." They were just pulling it right out of the, and I knew that sooner or later you were either going to bin it. But did he tell me anything? No. He wanted me to crash before he would advise me what the problem was. Anyway.
And I have to take advantage of this because you just lobbed me a ball to hit out of the park, but he's not the first man to say that you've got to screw loose.
Yeah. It's true.
In closing, words from eBay Motors. Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY motorcycle fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. Well, it's okay because whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything. Brake rotors, lights, and tire exhaust systems, whatever you need. And it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you order the right thing. All the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. Thank you for listening to The Lowdown Show.